Representatives of Judaism and Buddhism were the first to believe in the transmigration of souls after death. It is these beliefs that have formed the basis of religions that contain the love of the world, the wisdom of the ages, as well as faith in the infinity of individual consciousness. The Eastern sages have always been sure that the soul is immortal. Despite the fact that our body ages and then dies altogether, the spiritual personality remains. Each of us has moments when we are forced to say goodbye to our loved ones, realizing that we will never see them again. However, if you believe the Eastern sages who know the laws of reincarnation, the deceased can be met, but only in a completely different image. The soul is able to move into another body, which does not necessarily have to be human. It can be some kind of animal, for example, a dog. There are a huge number of stories that relatives of deceased people perceive as proof of the reincarnation of the soul. Researchers, philosophers and esotericists have been trying for centuries to unravel this mystery, to find convincing evidence of the reincarnation of souls. Many years of work on the version suggesting the possibility of the transmigration of spiritual matter from one body to another have given rise to a variety of hypotheses. One of the theories says that the human soul performs a certain function, namely, it maintains the natural balance. In each life, she gets the necessary experience, and after the death of the physical body, she moves to another, but necessarily of the opposite sex. The transmigration of souls after death can leave a mark on the body, for example, in the form of moles. One of the theories that arose in the process of studying such a phenomenon indicates that large birthmarks are marks from the past. To be more precise, these are the places where there were scars on your old body. Perhaps a large birthmark indicates a fatal wound that killed the person whose soul now lives in you. Some people tell incredible stories, assuring others that images and memories periodically arise in their minds that have nothing to do with real life. They are convinced that these are pre-reincarnation fragments reproduced at the level of cellular memory. Experiments aimed at establishing the facts of reincarnation were carried out long before various equipment and scientific laboratories appeared. So, in the Eastern countries there were unique burial traditions. A puncture was made in a certain part of the body to a deceased person, and when a newborn was born, they looked for a mole in a similar place on it. Have you ever wondered what your birthmarks are? Perhaps their appearance is not accidental. Many years later, Jim Tucker, a researcher who documented the most interesting cases of reincarnation, became interested in this custom. So, one of his texts says that a year after the death of his grandfather, a baby was born. There was a strange mole on his arm, exactly in the place where the mark was left before the funeral of the deceased. But the oddities didn't end there. A few years later, when the boy began to talk, he suddenly addressed his grandmother in a diminutive form, just as his grandfather liked to do. After the death of her husband, no one called the elderly widow that. Everyone was in the deepest shock, and the boy's mother admitted that she had seen her father in a dream, who did not want to part with his family, and was looking for a way to return home. In the same book about reincarnation, there is another case that makes people think about the probability of the existence of this phenomenon. In a public hospital located in Miami, a woman named Diana has worked all her adult life. In the hospital, she met her soulmate. The man whom Diana married, and then married him, had a birthmark that resembled a crescent moon. The couple lived for many years in love and joy, but the most interesting thing happened at a psychotherapist's appointment. The woman shared a story that allegedly happened in her previous life. She claimed that she was in the body of an Indian woman who was forced to hide from the colonizers from Europe who occupied America. Once, in order not to betray herself and the crying child she was holding in her arms, the woman had to close his mouth. Inadvertently, she strangled the baby, on the back of whose head there was a mole in the form of a crescent. Modern scientists also had to face an example of reincarnation. A boy was born in a Turkish town. After a while, he began to claim that he remembers numerous fragments from a past life in which he was a soldier. The boy said that when he was a serviceman, he was shot with a large caliber rifle. The wound turned out to be fatal. For the first time he began to talk about his memories at a very young age, absolutely not knowing what reincarnation is. Later it became known that a case with the medical history of a soldier who was admitted for treatment with a wound in the right area of the face was found in the archive of a local clinic. He died a week later. Is it worth saying that the boy was born with multiple birth defects on the right side of his face? An even stranger story happened in the 70s of the last century. The young woman had a son named Kevin. At the age of 2, the boy died of blood cancer caused by a complex fracture of his leg, which had not healed properly. The young patient was desperately tried to save, and a course of chemotherapy was carried out. A catheter was inserted through his neck from the right side, and a scar appeared in the area of the left ear, due to the deformation of the eye. The baby died in terrible agony. 10 years later, a woman who lost her son gave birth to another child, but from another man. The newborn boy developed a birthmark exactly in the place where the scar of the deceased baby was. Later it turned out that the second son has congenital problems with his left eye, and also limps on the leg that was broken by his older brother, although no pathologies were found. When he became quite an adult, the guy told incredible stories, revealing the whole essence of reincarnation. He claimed that the soul of the elder brother was reborn in his image. He accurately recounted the entire medical course, and also accurately indicated the location of the catheter. In addition to the memories associated with pain and suffering, the guy remembered his old place of residence, describing in detail the house in which, in fact, he had never been. A Burmese girl with a Japanese past. The world learned about this story thanks to the work of psychiatrist Ian Stevenson, who described an amazing case in his teachings on reincarnation. In the 60s of the last century, a girl was born on the territory of Burma, who at the age of 3 began to talk about being a Japanese soldier in her previous life. According to her, he was burned alive by local residents, tied tightly to a tree. In addition to the fact that the girl was overcome by terrible memories, she was radically different from her peers in her behavior. She did not recognize Buddhism, did not wear long hair, and slapped the children with whom she periodically walked on the playground in the same way as the Japanese soldiers who attacked Burma did. It is worth noting the fact that she was an unusual child from birth. There was a clear defect on the girl's right hand. The ring and middle fingers turned out to be fused, resembling the membrane of waterfall animals. A few days later, doctors amputated some of the phalanges, and the child's mother claims that there was a spot on her daughter's right hand that resembled a burn, as well as stripes very similar to rope marks. To the question of whether there is reincarnation, you will be given a positive answer by the residents of the village of Alunamiana, which is located in India. It was here that a boy named Taranjit Singh lived. Being at the age of 2, he stated that in his previous life he was an ordinary student named Satnam Singh, who lived 60 kilometers from his native village of Taranjita. The boy told his parents that his previous life was cut short as a result of a ridiculous accident, namely after a scooter flew into the student. The boy also said that he remembers the last seconds of his former existence, as if he was lying in a pool of blood, and there were notes and textbooks lying around. Taranjit remembered that at the time of the accident he had exactly 30 rupees in his pocket. The boy's words were not taken seriously for a long time, because in a village where the population is poorly educated, no one knows what reincarnation is. However, the father, tired of the constant stories of his child, decided to sort out the situation and get to the truth. He learned that a guy with that name really lived, and then died under the wheels of a scooter. Going with their son to a nearby village, they found the house where Satnam lived. His parents were shocked by the facts of their son's life operated by someone else's child. They confirmed that Satnam was dying in a pool of blood, and textbooks were scattered around, as well as the fact that at the time of his death there were 30 rupees in his pocket. Rumors of an incredible rebirth of the soul quickly spread throughout the province. Local authorities turned to experts who were asked to conduct an examination. Taranjit was asked to write several sentences, after which they did judicial handwriting. Everyone was really perplexed when it turned out that the handwriting of both guys was almost identical.